Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain.
And it is good to be back. Well, at least after the October 1 celebrations. Good morning and welcome to the program. I'm Malpe Ogu Yusuf.
Yes, indeed, Malpe. Very good to have you back. Good morning and welcome to the program. I am Bukola Koka.
If only you knew why she is happy to have you back.
You didn't have to go there, I am.
Well, good morning and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily, as you heard my colleague say. It's October 4. It's Wednesday morning. I'm Ayo Makinde. Welcome to the program.
Yes, all of you, welcome back. Now talk about the certificate saga, all of you. So, yes, indeed, just in time, because it's all over the place now. And as a matter of fact, you just wonder, goodness, what is all this about? So, yeah, depending on what side of the divide you look at this matter from, there is always a matter for you to look at. And so it goes. Yes, Chicago State University, last night, it was the talk of the town, all the more because they went ahead and came through with some perspective because the PDP candidate had gone to seek clarifications about the certificate that the president submitted to INEC, and there were questions about all of those. So it's a different sides really to it, so just see how much of those we can pick. So the thing is, the PDP candidate is seeking this clarification because because if you look at the grounds of disqualification of a contestant for that position of the office of the president, which I imagine that the area for the ground for election petition disqualification happens to be one of them. So he might be coming through that area because I'm not sure he's coming under the part where he says there was not that much compliance or he didn't garner enough votes or the required votes. But, you know, when you then look at the grounds for disqualification for election, and then you look at section 131, where it then says a person shall be qualified for election to the office of the president if A, he is a citizen of Nigeria by birth, he has attained the age of 35 years, C, he's a member of a political party and is sponsored by that political party, and D, he has been educated up to at least school certificate level or its equivalent. So there are different things, different arguments about all of this. So what exactly was submitted to INEC? So if it was this Chicago State University, of which the PDP candidate is seeking clarification, and so if it then comes through that we went through all this rigmarole only to find out that, well, did he attend? If he attended, was that the right certificate that he submitted to INEC? So if you attended and you don't have the right certificate to INEC, is that enough grounds upon which you can be disqualified? And then if, and by the way, I mean, when lawyers say there are very strict circumstances under which appeal and accept certain evidences. So if there are fresh evidence, they say they can come under certain notions or certain criteria to accept it, because if they say, Lord, this material was not available before us, it wasn't before us at the time, and so we feel it's relevant now, different kettle of fish entirely. But if they're relying on that certificate which is submitted, look, it's one thing for you to have attended the university and the law didn't say that one. But if you submitted it, it means that they have to look at it from that perspective, whether or not you have gotten that school set, because we had some argument with some lawyers before I came and said that they thought, well, if he's gotten school cert, he's qualified. And I thought, wait a minute. Yeah, he might have gotten it, but that wasn't the reference upon which you went to INEC. So even if you have a master's degree, that's why some folks, and I see and I wonder why, I came to understand it later. They've got PhD, they've got 2 MScs, but you know what they submitted to INEC? School cert.
School certificate. Yeah.
And I thought, oh, so this is what's going on here. But the bigger picture, all of these laws may be there, but how this matter, how we're being perceived globally, internationally, and those who are looking to the president saying, but wait a minute, would the president have saved us all of this rigmarole from the get-go? Would he have come clean? Did he come clean? Was there a need to come clean if he didn't come clean? So it's whichever way you look at it, they will always look at the president and say, I don't know what they will be referring to. So it's a big one, really, guys.
So are we starting from here? Because I mean, what a way to come back and jump.
That's
right
why I say good to have you back too, Buki. Good to have you back as well.
Oh, well, look, I mean, I have been saying, no matter what you do, Chimling, even when you're on leave, trust me, this matter will keep jumping at you from wherever it is that you are. And you'll be wondering, look, why can't we just have clarity and closure on this matter? And what immediately comes to mind is, you know, what happened in the United States when President Barack Obama was about to run. And some people started to question whether or not, you know, he was a U.S. citizen. They called it the birthers controversy. What the president, who wasn't president then, did was publish his birth certificate. And some people said, some other people said, that was totally unnecessary. I mean, this man has run as a senator, he's done this, he's done that.
He did it still.
But he did it still. And, you know, for some people, even though, yes, there'll still be naysayers, people who will be looking for fault where there's no fault. In what year was Hawaii annexed to the United States? Was it always a part of the U.S.? That was there. But hey, the certificate was there for all to see that he was qualified, born a United States citizen, which is the primary grounds. I mean, it's extremely necessary for you to even dream of even running as U.S. president. So the question was this totally necessary, Mr. President? This controversy that has arisen, and this came up while he was governor of Lagos State. Yeah. It continued to dog him when he decided to run for president. Couldn't he have, you know, set this straight once and for all, address the issue, you know, address the nation on the issues? But, you know, looking at how all of this has now panned out, maybe one might understand why he didn't want to come out categorically on it. Because even now that the certificate, or will I say the CSU, that is Chicago State University, has come out, there have been more questions raised around the qualifications which he submitted to the Chicago State University to enable him run, beg your pardon, to enable him be a bona fide student of that university. We understand that even after you've submitted some certificates to the school, though, you still have to write some preliminary exams which will qualify you for admission. But the thing right now is this, the certificate, or the certificate which he submitted to INEC, you know, it doesn't appear that that was from Chicago State University, even though the university has confirmed that he did.
So indeed, two things there.
Yeah, two things. That indeed he was a student of their institution. So for a number of Nigerians, depending on what side you look at it, but there are those who I think who have, you know, looked at it from the angle of transparency and the minimum qualifications that we can, not minimum qualifications, or the minimum that we can demand from our leaders in terms of ethics, in terms of, you know, indices of, will I say, pre-qualifications for governance. Simple things like, Malkwe Ogun Yusuf, what is your name? My name should be my name. Nobody should go and be questioning, and, you know, it should take them so much money, so much effort to be able to confirm if my name is my name. Should be. Did you go to school? It should be clear as day. There should be no question about it. These are essential building blocks because they speak to the heart of integrity and moral uprightness, the minimum demanded of any leader. I'm just going to read here the statement of Mrs. Obi Ezekwesili, who put up a post on what is now X. I was like, put up a post on Twitter, but
it'll be hard to stick X.
Yeah, X, but that's what it is. So she says, how so much easier it would have been for Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu to have saved the country and the people the embarrassment of this Chicago State University CSU court case by instantly and voluntarily asking the institution to publish his academic credentials. How difficult could that have been? How so less traumatic such exemplary disclosure to remove all doubts would have been for Nigerians. Like most Nigerians, it is profoundly embarrassing to field mocking questions on this matter, that strikes at the heart of our national integrity from foreigners. Our public leaders of a certain genre despise transparency, and yet it is an antidote to fiascos like this one. As citizens, at the end of the 2023 electoral process that follows the judgment by the Nigerian Supreme Court, our work is cut out for us to uncompromisingly demand a root and branch reform of the entire at INEC Nigeria and judicial systems. This is a must-do. And I think that all Nigerians can rally around this point, because essentially this is what it is. I don't think that we need to be, going around in rigmaroles. I don't think that this sort of question, this big doubt, this big dark cloud, and it became a partisan issue. Excuse me, over whether or not the president went to school and actually says he's a student of a school which he did attend. That was, Chamberlain. Now, whether lawyers are now still going to pursue
this matter,
exactly a question of forgery, because did he forge the certificate?
Yeah,
that is now a different kettle of fish. But we have now been told, and it has now been confirmed under oath, the Chicago State University has sworn under oath
which
that
is a very serious matter.
Which is a very serious matter in the climes, where these are taken seriously, that indeed he was their student for the number of years that he came out, very, very good grades in that school. But the certificate now, which he's tendered, that INEC has, we understand is not exactly that because of the Chicago State University.
I also did ask those lawyers at that point, because when I looked at those sections that they referred me to, and I thought, so wait a minute. So if they say that this certificate, which they say is a diploma in the state that he submitted, so if they are questioning the one in the records of INEC, which they say, no, well, we're not sure about this particular one. Yes, he was a student here, but he wasn't this one, I'm not sure of. Questions of discrepancy, dishonesty. So would that be a ground? And they say, well, look, if they look at all of this and just feel, do people resign in this country? And then they say, well, that would be the day. If for the purposes of integrity and transparency, we're not sure how some of these things will pan out. But because what I also thought was, at the time, remember it was those first times when we're coming back to democracy in 1999 and the like. So the experience that politicians have garnered in terms of how they handled this particular clause, which, by the way, they've amended this law several times so that they're always not caught in the web. When perhaps, because those articles which we also saw, when they thought, well, maybe because he was in a hurry and it takes, what, is it between 8 to 10 weeks to apply?
For a replacement.
And get a replacement if you lost yours, which probably may have happened here, if you didn't have that much time, and then they came up with this one. And then if they had enough experience at the time, they would have thought, why do I need to waste my time and submit this one? I should buy secondary school. I give them, primary school. Give them the school, sir. That experience wasn't there at the time for a lot of people. They wanted to say, look, I'm most qualified. Give me my best degree at that time. And so they're caught in this web. But how they perceive it will be a huge one. Will this cloud, even if the courts at the end of the day say, this is not a ground, how will this stick? How will it go? So, guys, very interesting.
Wow. Malquer Chamberlain, this has gone, on for too long. It's been trailing us now. It's not beyond the president. It's trailing us as a nation from as way back, as far back as 1999, when, Constitution and Human Rights lawyer Gani Fahimi sued former Lagos State governor, now president, to court at the time for lying under oath, for saying that he went to Government College Ibadan. And the lawyers to the presidential candidate of the PDP have made us to understand, that that college has come out to say repeatedly that the president didn't attend that school. So it's really, a national embarrassment, but also equally so for Chicago State University as well. Now, why do I say so? Some of the findings, that have been made to understand, according to those who have perused, the academic records released by Chicago State University and compared it with what the president submitted to INEC, have also identified that the records presented from the Southwest College, the documents for which the president was supposed to use to qualify, to go to Chicago State University, reportedly belonged to a female. So, it's important to note that, U.S. citizens cannot lie under oath. If they lie under oath, they, stand to go to prison for up to 10 years. So it's as much an international embarrassment, also for Chicago State University. And that aspect, the discrepancy, the inconsistency in those documents need also to be clarified by the Chicago State University, even if it washes its hands clean off of the ones presented by the president to, the Independent National Electoral Commission. Of course, you've also been reminded about Section 137 as well, that anyone that presents a forged certificates to the commission does not qualify to stand for election. So it goes to, show that the judiciary will be under a very huge test at this point in our history about how it would choose to rule on this case, particularly because, the lawyers of the presidential candidate of the PDP are holding the judiciary by the jugular to quote, precedent, which is what they always hinge, much of their rulings on, as we've seen, at the Presidential Election Petition Court. They have cited the case of Uzodinma and the former deputy president of the Senate. They've also cited the 2008 case of, former governor of Rivers State, Rotimi Amechi, and Celestine Omehia. So what precedent are we setting in line with the spirit and the laws of the judiciary, whichever way that the judiciary chooses to rule on this case? What precedent are we setting, particularly as it has to do with who we say that we are as a people? This is a test of our national values, about honesty, about integrity, about a commitment, to, the dignity of the human person and, to truth about who we say we are. So this is very, very huge, on our national values. Ayo.
Well, there's something that Chimelin said when he started, went and quoted Section 131, qualification for election as president. And D says he has been educated up to, if a person shall be qualified for election to the office of the president, if he has been educated to up to at least school certificate level or its equivalent. Now, what Maupe and Chamberlain have underscored repeatedly is that it is confirmed that he did attend. The proof of attending, that is what is in contention. Well, that's the argument that lawyers, the justices of the Supreme Court are going to have to consider if they bring all of that up. Added to the fact that someone might also say, hey, all these are pre-election matters. Are they pre-election matters or not?
Yeah, well, statute rings in my head as well.
I guess we're going to have to see. We're running out of time, guys. Let's quickly look at what the papers are saying, because indeed the papers are saying the same thing. The front page, for instance, of the Nigerian News Direct this morning is looking at the same story right on its front page and saying controversy trails, Chicago varsity. Controversy trails release of Tinubu's academic credentials. That's the lead story of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Tinubu is spending dollars to suppress certificate release. That's ascribed to an LP chieftain. And the second writer, seems the editor of the Nigerian News Direct, and Malpa shared notes on this. Second writer says he should have saved Nigerians this embarrassment. Ascribed to Obi Ezekwesili. Find the details of that story on page 4 of the Nigerian News Direct this morning.
And up next this morning, we have This Nigeria, which chooses to tow a different path this morning, but also with something that is just as concerning. 24,720 gender-based violence recorded nationwide in 1 month. Minister raises the alarm. FG to review 2017 National Policy on Justice to encapsulate SGBV. That's quite a number, 24,720 gender-based violence cases nationwide. What's happening
in 1 month? Please underscore that.
In 1 month.
In 1 month.
In 1 month. So what's happening to the VAP law in Nigeria, violence against persons. So quite a number of states have domesticated that law, but there's a difference between law in Nigeria and what obtains. How can it be effectively put into use? What's happening to the prosecution of cases of sexual and gender-based violence in most states? How equipped are the gender desks of police stations in most states in Nigeria?
I think that's the
huge questions that we should ask.
That's the thing, really. It's the states. So for us to have this number in all 36 states, maybe we need to do some digging as to how serious it has been before this particular one that the minister is talking about, and for the minister to be raising the alarm now. If it is this bad in 1 month now, I wonder how bad it was during COVID. Because a good number of people
that's
couldn't go
another
out
kettle of
at that
fish
time. Okay.
Entirely. Well, let's take a look at some other stories. Perhaps we'll be able to have that conversation in the coming days. But these are the other stories on the front page of this Nigeria. Senators amend rules, stop first-timers from contesting Senate President Deputy. Interesting one there. But let's leave it there for this Nigeria newspaper.
I'll take a look at leadership. Impeachment plot. Senate amends rules to ward off threats against Akpabio. Talk about striking. Stops Yari. Other first-timers from eyeing Senate presidency. Concerns mount over non-inauguration of 74 standing committees. So how they managed to achieve this, you just wonder. But will this be the end of this matter? Will there be other congregation or gatherings to say, well, we're not so happy with this. How do we go about this? So it's going to be one probably that may hang over the Senate leadership, probably, like a sword of Damocles. We don't know. Can't say for certain. But that's what you see right here. And then they also highlight this CSU matter. Lawyers commend CSU over prompt release of Tinubu's academic records. Well, I thought they would have put this prompt in parentheses here now, but depending on how you see it. So that section 137J, equally interesting, where it talks about qualifications, grounds upon which you can be disqualified. J says he has presented a forged certificate to the Independent National Electoral Commission. So yes, even if everybody knows that you went to UNILAG, and then they find that the 9X record, the certificate you have of UNILAG doesn't have the stamp of UNILAG, is that tantamount to forgery? So in the light of CSU statement, can that be admissible in our jurisdiction here? I guess we will see. Diphtheria. States consider face masks as cases escalate. This is equally very serious, guys. The country needs to listen to this and see what we can do. And then Naira Marley in police custody over Mohbad's death. You can catch all of that. Leadership.
Well, The Guardian is the one I have for you now, and it says hurdles for federal government 2024 budget over 10 trillion naira deficit. Palliatives. They didn't catch the CSU Vogue, the front page of The Guardian this morning. And they have a breakdown for you, focusing very sternly on the economy. 2022 FGN Budget Implementation Report, that is right there. They also have a number of other stories. Tinubu nominates Balarabe to replace El Rufai, 2 others. You also see the greener pasture, tackling mass exodus on desert Mediterranean routes. That is the news analysis. And this disaster, well, I don't want to call it disaster, but this incident, this very terrible incident, happened in Lagos. 2 children critically injured. Pregnant woman, tricyclist die in Lagos auto crash. Very, very sad story right there. Page 8 is where you'll find details. Let's leave it there for The Guardian.
And up next this morning is the Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard newspaper leads with, another subject matter just as worrying. Security, frontline troops, army probes claims of poor feeding. Take a look at the riders. Army takes allegations very seriously, says spokesman, adds priority placed on troops' welfare. Supply chain under thorough investigation. Adds COS committed to ensuring troops are well fed, motivated, and equipped. If something as simple as, feeding of troops on the front line, those who are, taking on the heat and all the danger on behalf of the nation are not properly fed. Where does it leave the battle against insecurity and the fight against banditry in the northeast and northwest of the country?
Don't forget that, we saw some videos of some soldiers sometime in the past protesting. This was part of the things that involved it. Their welfare wasn't being catered for sufficiently, and everyone complained about that. We also did the same here, calling the attention of the authorities to that unfortunate fact. How fast they have or not they have taken to it, I guess that's what we're seeing on the front page of the
Absolutely,
Vanguard
much more than videos of them protesting. We've seen videos of them recording themselves deserting the front lines, because of disillusionment and stories about their welfare. The authority, the leadership of the Nigerian army should take a closer look at this. This is very, very worrying. A number of other stories on the front page of the Vanguard. This one is under the inset picture and under the big story as well. It's also about security. 8 abducted NYSC members still in captivity. Families are sending out a reminder to the NYSC and to security operatives to facilitate efforts to ensure that their family members, those core members, are returned home safely. Above the nameplate, there are a number of other stories as well. New Senate rule restricts president, deputy seat to ranking members. And there's this one also in the middle. Tribunal judgment, DSS arrests lady threatening suicide bomb attack on VP Ganduje, lead judge Gawuna. And that's it for the front page of the Vanguard newspaper.
Daily Independent has this on its front page. By the way, I find Mr. and Mrs. quite interesting this morning. Go check it out yourself. Daily Independent newspaper this morning has this as its lead. Reps to probe 15.5 trillion naira pension assets, 10 trillion naira advanced to FG. I remember Mokwa complaining about this pension thing the other time. Don't touch. But has it been touched? Find the details on the front page, continues on the inside pages. Look at the riders. Urge government to stop killing of peasant farmers across Nigeria. Ask FG, beg your pardon, ask IGP to secure release of abducted core member in Zamfara. Details you'll find on the inside pages. Of course, the Tinubu CSU story is right there under the picture. Tinubu CSU released record shows owned by female. Female is in parentheses. What does that mean? Speak up on Tinubu's certificate scandal, Shoyinka told. Anyway, that's the story this morning. That's the Daily Independent newspaper today.
All right, look at Business Day today. Nigerians return to 2G devices as economy fights. Oh, yeah. So, who would have thought? 2G devices. So that perhaps we'll ask manufacturers. They also weigh in on the economy out of this. You see that this morning here. Nigeria hurts FDI with Africa's highest work visa free. Oh, no. Highest work visa fee. So maybe they're trying to see, we need to pay attention to some of these things. But it's there for everyone to see. That's Business Day today.
Our New Telegraph has this, silent moratorium causing prison congestion. That's according to a source. That's what they have on the front page here. As 3,325 condemned inmates await hangman's news. Governor's foot dragging on signing death warrants. Non-execution taking toll on our facilities. That's according to the Nigeria Correctional Service. That story is on page 3 of the paper. You also have a number of other stories there. ACF bewails decline in income value, living standard of Nigerians. Nigerians lose 752.25 billion naira in fuel shipment to foreigners. Those stories are all there on the front page of New Telegraph this morning. Let's leave it there for the paper.
Yeah, and that ends a look at some of the dailies here as well. So we will be back in a moment. Stay on with us.
The federal government grants a wage award of 35,000 naira only to all federal government workers, beginning from the month of September, pending when a new minimum wage is expected to have been signed into law. 2, a minimum wage committee shall be inaugurated within 1 month from the date of this agreement. 3, federal government suspends collection of value-added tax, VAT, on diesel for 6 months beginning from October 2023. The NLC and the TUC accept to suspend for 30 days the planned indefinite nationwide strike scheduled to begin Tuesday, the 3rd of October 2023. And 15, this memorandum shall be filed with the relevant court of competent jurisdiction within 1 week as consent judgment by the federal government.
We have a signed agreement, and we have signed this agreement with the belief that government will act in utmost good faith. We signed this agreement with the belief that every single item in this agreement are implementable. Every single item in this agreement, we are extremely serious about them, and we wish to also reiterate that we are expecting 100% implementation and not a 99% in any way.
Some governors are paying 20, some are paying 10 to mitigate this already. So it is something that affects everybody. In some private sector companies, they are taking some measures. I can remember 1 or 2 banks that have equally implemented about 100% wage review. So it's not something that, we are saying whether it will affect them or not. It will.
All right, welcome back to Sunrise Today. Yes, as you can see, those two gentlemen join us this morning to weigh in on the decision, the agreement, if you will, between the federal government and Labour. Honorable Uchenna Ekwe is a comrade. He is the head international relations of Nigeria Labour Congress. We also do have Mr. Segun Ajayi Kader, who is the Director General, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, man who joins us virtually from Lagos. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so yes, before we go into this, I'm going to have to ask both of you. I can't resist it. This CSU matter is all over the place. Mr. Kader, I know he's our president at the moment. He sits on the seat, and so whatever happens to the president affects, everybody in the country may look to that. Well, you, equally may have heard or read about this at some point in time, maybe while you're discussing or concerned man issues. This is what perhaps you've seen it in some of the headlines. What do you make of all of this making the rounds? Maybe as a layman sitting from a distance and looking at how everything is playing out.
In particular, what are you talking about? I didn't quite get most of what.
The certificate matter concerning the president.
Oh, well, okay. It's not actually within my remit to talk about the president's certificate and so on, but I believe that these are election matters, and once there is politics in the air, quite a lot of things are thrown around, one trying to outwit the other. But I believe it's safely in the courts. The legal process should be allowed to take its course. My only worry, really, about all of this is the fact that we need to get on with business of governance. So if the certificate issue should be left within the judicial space and let Nigeria get busy doing what is necessary. Our economy is in a very bad shape. And whether or not the president has certificate or he doesn't, he has produced it, I don't really bother myself with the fact. But the fact is that he's president and he should govern. There's a lot of expectation. The manufacturing space, for instance, is gasping for breath. So my major concern is that our economy should move and let the legal processes and the lawyers end their living and let Nigeria sort of progress with its activity.
Okay. So I hear you, but let me ask Honorable Ekwe as well. I mean, yes, the judiciary will do their thing, but I think they want us to be concerned because when they say justice must not just be done, it must be seen to have been done, including by business people as well. But you have also been in the House before where certain cases came up at that time. Does this in any way bother you, or you equally feel, look, let them sort it out. We will go on with labor matters? Okay, Mr. Kwe, pardon me. Okay, I think they say we'll have to adjust certain things with your mic, but we'll get your views out as well soon. But I'm going to go back to Mr. Kadere at this point in time. Apologies for that. So, Mr. Kadere, this agreement that has been reached with Labour and the presidency, I know there's supposed to be a private sector component, which we'll equally get on the show here today. But when this came through, because I also do know, remember, that MAN had raised certain issues for a while in terms of what needs to be done. So there are parts here where they spoke about the private sector, probably MAN too, but tell us, let's hear from you directly since you're here with us. Do you think that this sufficiently addresses the issues?
No, I think to a very large extent, what the agreement has done is to give some respite, some relief to the anxieties that most Nigerians have, not only the business community, but Nigeria as a whole. I mean, we had indicated, the organized private sector had indicated that a nationwide strike at this time will seriously complicate the precarious situation of the economy. And we are very happy that federal government and Labour heeded the voice of reason to resolve the issues that they've had for a very long time, at least in the immediate time frame. But I do not believe that we are at the end of the road yet. I believe that all that we have is a 30 days window, an extension to a 30 days window for them to resolve the issues that they have in between them. If you look through all that was agreed, several are based on what happens between now and either 13 days or between now and 30 days. That means depending on what they are able to continue to agree. But government has made some statements. It is expected that within this period, for instance, they are going to work out the modalities for fulfilling those promises that has been made. And what one will look forward to is that it should create a basis for a more permanent solution to the obvious challenges that not only businesses but Nigerians have. And I believe that this is what is needed to keep government on its toes. I do not believe that we need to get to this level. We need to raise everybody's BP, if I may use the word, or get the nation anxious about what will happen tomorrow before we arrive at this kind of resolution.
Okay.
To my mind, what government has agreed with now should have been agreed 2, 3, 4 weeks ago.
Okay, so let me bring it back to Comrade Ekwe. Before you go ahead and tell us if you believe this is sufficient basis for us to move forward. So while you go ahead and give us your perspective on what you were going to say about the initial question.
Yeah, like I said earlier in the discussion,
yeah,
the issues of morality and all that came up. You see, even why the court is dealing with it, from parents, individuals, very concerned about how this matter comes to the end. Because the younger generation who are not even political, who are not playing politics, the non-political actors are watching. And the statement of how this ends will mean a whole lot for tomorrow. So I think both the judges, presidents, and the political actors should be wary of the fact that the fabrics of our moral values is under question. It's not about winning or losing. The fabrics of our moral values is under trial. And how this ends, and unfortunately, the trial is coming from the highest point. And they have drawn the attention of everybody. So how or how not it is resolved will leave so much beyond today. And I think everybody should be cautious of this. It's not simply about winning who wins the legal technicalities. It will be about our tomorrow. What are our values? There are some question marks that stays out there. Recently, there was this big case of the young girl about JAMB result, forged or not forged. There's a way this will end. It will be difficult, even for teachers in classroom, to question students who are cheating.
So now, to the labor matters. Do you think that the agreements reached between federal government and labor is sufficient grounds for us to be optimistic about getting a permanent solution, as Mr. Kadea suggests?
Well, the question is a little tricky, being optimistic. I can only say that what we did is what in our consideration is what is attainable at this moment. But for us, yeah, some of those agreements, they are very critical, very silent issues that will play a role about what this agreement will be.
Which ones?
Example, many people might not pick it up. The joint monitoring of the rehabilitation process in the refineries. And why that means so much, as simple as it looks, is that if the rehabilitation of the local refining is not dealt with, and we start producing majority of our petroleum consumption locally, you will still be having the snippets of news that comes out every day. Oh, we are still subsidizing. Because the fact remains that if we don't refine locally and depend on 100% importation of petroleum products, the effect will still remain massive, which is there will be continuous pressure on Forex. Because those who import the petroleum will keep putting pressure on Forex. And as long as there is pressure on Forex, it is a vicious cycle, which means the further the Naira is devalued and the importation cost is high, the importers will try to mark up the price of petroleum. Then there will be a new cases of further increase in the pump price. So whatever that is attained now will be eroded.
In terms of the wage increase?
Yeah, will be eroded. That's for us, this at the bottom of it. And that's why what we have done now is that we have submitted to I want to be careful about the word I will use, but we have been bamboozled by the political and the economic elites in Nigeria across political parties who believes that the regulation is medical cure-all. And this the regulation, whether it is based on importation or local manufacturing, is a medical cure-all. We are convinced that it can be. Because as long as we import this product, the importers will need to buy foreign exchange. The more they buy, you put more pressure on the Naira. Naira will be further devalued. Then there will be a need to further increase the price of pump price to meet up the new cost of importation. This is very critical.
Well, I'm looking at this particular number 12, which is a point here. I think this is a statement of the Memorandum of Understanding reached between the federal government of Nigeria and Nigeria Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress as a result of disputes arising from withdrawal of subsidy of the price of very long-headed. But I mean, that's what it is. I mean, arising from the withdrawal of subsidy on the price of premium motor spirit on Monday, the 2nd of October, 2023. You referred to number 12, a joint visitation will be made to the refineries to ascertain their rehabilitation status. I have always thought that it was members of these unions who work in these refineries, and they should be able to give a very honest perspective as to what the status of work is. As a matter of fact, update Nigerians. Because Nigerians had questioned before now the fact that people were getting paid, they had been paid for many years, when refineries were not working. There have been questions as to what precisely were they doing there, and they're members of unions. So if indeed the federal government claims that work has started in some of these refineries and there's some rehabilitation going on, shouldn't there have been a very honest update from the people who have been working there? Why should there be a joint visitation, by both government and members of labor unions? Is it that they don't trust their own members?
No, as a matter of fact, what the question you asked answers the question itself. It is because the union members have disputed in the negotiation, have disputed the report of the progress being made in rehabilitation. So it is that disagreement which is based on the fact that we got from our own members that this rehabilitation is not up to what is being said. And the reaction is, naturally, no, we are doing it. Then the middle ground is, okay, we will jointly go and be sure that it's being done. So it's not as if the union have offered to say, wait a minute, we are not seeing this rehabilitation. We are not seeing this December deadline being achieved. Well, and the people are like, oh, what are you talking about? We are doing it. And it is on that basis we now said, okay, now there's a dispute on whether it is done or not done. Let it not be our report or government report. Let everybody be involved so that we can ascertain, is this work really, because there's a dispute now. So that one led that. If there is no dispute, it wouldn't have come up.
So are you saying that from what which one of the refineries are you going to be visiting? Is it the Port Harcourt refinery? Port Harcourt and Warri
Because
refinery?
that's where they said the rehabilitation is going on and will be ready by December.
You dispute that?
Yeah, we doubt about it being ready by December.
Okay. So for you right now, apart from this, because right now you have said that this agreement is for a 30-day period. Why 30 days?
Yeah. Again, it goes to the bottom of the fact of trust, a question of trust. Over the years, the unions have had cause not to trust agreements because agreements have been entered and the agreements have been reneged. And when, for example, if you go over the years, people felt even that the ASU people are troublemakers because they lack the patience to know that ASU keep asking, implement agreements we have reached. Now, we're given that window of 30 days. We know that there are some of the things that cannot be achieved in 30 days. But we want to see commitment. There are ones that can be achieved within 30 days. If those ones are implemented, it gives the basis to trust that, okay, other things could be done. But because we've come to a point that everybody finds difficult to trust what has been agreed, you can see for the first time, we're even talking about even taking to court.
This agreement?
Yes. Read the last.
This memorandum shall be filed with the relevant court of competent jurisdiction within 1 week as consent judgment by the federal government.
Yes.
Consent judgment?
Yes, so that it will be, so that we can take on government if they don't implement.
Okay, it will be very interesting. What parts of this agreement are you afraid that government might not implement?
Well, no,
what parts of it do you think they might really?
No, we don't want to be afraid of anything, but we're afraid of everything.
No, because I'm looking at the fact that, the salary, initially the wage award, which people thought was 25,000 naira, we found out that it's been clarified, it's 35,000 naira.
Yes.
It's supposed to be for a period of 6 months and all that. It's not for a period of 6 months?
It's supposed to be until a new minimum wage is negotiated
and signed to law.
And signed into law.
Okay. All right. So this is, yes, that's part of the clarification that has been made.
Because that's very important to us.
Yeah.
Because that's why you have the second part. The government tried to contest, why? We said, okay, set up the committee. If the committee finishes, because we have had the minimum wage is due.
It's for federal government workers anyway, isn't it?
Yeah, even nationally, minimum wage law.
No, I mean the 35,000 naira. The 35,000.
Yeah, the 35 for federal government workers. But the minimum wage is due to have a new minimum wage by April next year. And we've had experiences where it falls due and it takes another 6 months before it is resolved. So now we want to be sure so that we are not thrown aback. Let something be there until it's finished. If we finish the review before the time, we know we're just waiting for the new commencement of the minimum wage implementation to start.
Let me come to Mr. Ajayi Kadir. You have, commended the federal government for some of the steps that it has taken and also Labour for some of the steps or the agreements that have been reached here. I'm looking at the fact that the federal government is suspending collection of value-added tax on diesel for 6 months, beginning from October, that's this month. I'm wondering how much of an effect is this going to have on the price of diesel and perhaps cost of production? Can you give us an idea of how this might positively affect manufacturers?
Okay, thank you. I believe this is part of what we had requested for in the past. We had asked that diesel is to us like an input in the production process, because right from the factory where diesel is required to power our machines, up until also when you have it to take your finished products to the market, and before then, take the raw materials from either the ports or from wherever you are getting it to your factory. Diesel is required. You are aware that during the course of the year, we had suffered 2 or 3 major grid shutdowns, and manufacturers always will rely on diesel to power our generator. So all these are input costs that has negatively affected manufacturing volumes, our cost of production, and disrupted logistics. So if the price is reduced, as it will definitely be when you remove the VAT, it is going to assist in bringing down the cost of manufacturing, which also means that when these products get into the market, it will come at a lower price, and this will help the buyers whose disposable income over the period had tended to dwindle. So I believe it is a positive thing, but like you rightly said, it is for a period of 6 months. And so what happens thereafter? The expectation is that we are going to have some other measures that are being taken by government. We should start to see the results so that the cost of production in general will be reduced. Power is just one of the challenges that we have. There are several others to which solutions are sought in order to bring the cost of manufacturing down. You are aware that manufacturing competitiveness has been constrained over a very long period of time, and this has affected manufacturing performance. So I believe that this step is a positive one, and that at the end of the day, we should begin to look beyond the 6 months that this will last. And even during this period, to have complementary measures that will generally promote manufacturing and allow the sector to contribute to job creation, to innovation and building the national wealth, even pay taxes to government. So I believe that it's the right thing to do. And it's one of the major victories in this agreement between labor and government. It is also very important that we work on the refineries, as the labor rep said. It is critically important that, and that I agree with him, is going to be the more permanent solution to these lingering challenges, because so long as we import fuel, there is no way you are going to guarantee that the prices will not go up. And it is important that the refineries we have is long overdue, that they should start working. So I believe if all of these are taken together, we might begin to resolve the issues in the energy sector that has combined with other challenges to limit not only manufacturing performance, but the economy in general.
All right. Okay, Mr. Gade, just pardon me, we need to just go to a quick break, but we will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Adverse is solving a lot of problems for us. It is centralizing all the information.
Adverse has helped us concerning the preparation of results. Adverse has also helped us to have a database.
The fact that we can analyze data, so I know, children performance according to gender. I can access my financial information, who has paid, who hasn't paid.
I would recommend Adverse to schools, big or small schools.
Use Adverse today.
What are you waiting for? Use Adverse. Come on now.
Visit www.adverse.net/free demo to book a demo.
Southward,
fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700-FURNITURE.
The Duchess International Hospital caters to every aspect of the family's health needs. A one-stop shop for maternity and child health services, emergency medicine and critical care, medical and surgical subspecialties, dental and eye care, and a range of other subspecialties and services, all available at a single location right here in the heart of Ikeja. And it really doesn't matter if you're paying out of pocket using your HMO or private insurance. We focus completely on providing that world-class affordable healthcare for all the family at all times.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. And we still have with us Honorable Uchenna Ekwe, Head International Relations, Nigeria Labour Congress, who joined us in our Abuja studio. And we also have Mr. Segun Ajayi Kadri, the Director General, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Of course, we're reviewing the agreement between the federal government and Labour, which has a significant outcome in what would have become a nationwide strike that would have taken off yesterday, but has now been suspended, albeit for 30 days. Mr. Kadri, let me come to you now. I wonder, I didn't quite hear the enthusiasm in your response to Marquez's last question about the suspension of VAT on diesel and its impact in, the production and services of manufacturers. But also, as a follow-up to that, did you expect a follow-up on the promise of the administration in President Tinubu's July broadcast about 75 billion naira credit to high-yielding manufacturing companies? Did you expect a follow-up to that in that speech? And was it, getting the short end of the stick for manufacturers when that did not, surface in the speech about, what would have been a significant policy of government on making the work of manufacturers, the business climate for manufacturers, more conducive? Did you miss that? Was it something that the association expected?
Okay, I think right from the time that Mr. President made that announcement, I believe you referred to the 75 billion for a minimum of 75 manufacturing industries and maybe 125 billion to MSME and so on. But in particular, the one for the manufacturers. We have since actually made suggestions to government as to how we believe that this could be judiciously expended. My understanding, what I hear is that government is working out the modalities for giving that incentive, so to say, to manufacturers. But in the real sense of it, 75 billion naira to 75 manufacturers. MAN has 2,500 members. And as you would expect, more than 70% of those are small and medium-scale industries. If you are going to spend 75 billion for those, I'm sure your guess is as good as mine as to how far-reaching it is. But we did indicate at that time that it is a step in the right direction, in the sense that manufacturers need competitive credit facilities. That is the ones that will allow you to operate your businesses, be able to make profit, pay taxes, and do not have the burden of repayment. So as an indication of what direction government was going, as his government, this present administration just came in when it was announced, one was expecting that, yes, this facility is there, it to be channeled through maybe a special purpose bank like the BOI that will not escalate the interest rate that would be expected. We didn't expect, and I think government mentioned it, the president mentioned it, that it will be no more than 9%. So we believe, I mean, we understand that the process is on for determining how it is going to be expended. And we look forward to an expansion of this, of the volume that will be available for manufacturers to be able to take. But I think a more lasting solution will have been preferred. The sector is desirous of adequate and effective credit facility. I mean, the lending rate in the market now is...
Mr. Kadri, pardon me there. The president said at the time that, you know, that the expenditure will be between July and March next year. And we're already in October. If the process is still ongoing, when will it kickstart? And then there's a specific mention of 125 billion naira for MSMEs, which is apart from the 75 billion naira for high-yielding manufacturers. So if neither of this has, you know, started, when will it start?
Yeah, it's worrisome, and I don't speak for government, but what I'm just telling you what we had. You know, soon after the ministers came in, I believe that that process is on, but it is slow. We'll have expected that by now it will be out, and that manufacturers and MSMEs will have started to enjoy, the facility. But I believe that government is sorting itself out. It is important that they also take their time to identify those that will be given the facilities, so that, and this is a political environment, it is not seen as political largesse, and we should clearly identify those that are manufactured. As a matter of fact, MAN has offered that we have our list of members, we have their profile, we have their requirements, we have where they are located, and there is a ready bank. We have indicated in our memo to government that this is a bank of industry, has participated in so many loan facilities, special purposes that have been made by government and have been well delivered. So the bank should be, I would advise that that they be given the responsibility to give those facilities. It is better late than never. I think now government should, particularly with the agreement with Labour, government should expedite action to make sure that these facilities are available. But my critical point here, which I don't want to miss, is that even the 125 billion and the 75 billion will not address the credit crisis for the manufacturing sector. We need a more permanent solution. We need a deliberate attempt, for instance, by the CBN to ensure that loan to the sector is prioritized and is given at rates that we allow it. The existing 26 to 24% or 24% lending to the manufacturers is not helpful and is responsible for low manufacturing performance. So I'm not blown away by the 75 billion and the 125 billion. Yes, it is something to go by, but I believe it should be indicative of what needs to be done. And I think that's the direction that we should go. Those with whom we compete, either domestically and internationally, have maybe a maximum of like 5%, 6%. You can't compete in that kind of environment. So I think this is a solution, is a drop in the ocean, if I might say. And I think that a government, probably if they succeed with this one, it will create more appetite for expansion. I mean, that's why we gave it a lot of credit. But it doesn't mean that it's the solution that the sector seeks.
All right, well, Mr. Kadri, Mr. Jai Kadri, I'd like to stay with you for a bit. In that agreement that the president signed, where the federal government signed with Labour, one of the issues raised by your colleague in the organized private sector yesterday, when we had this conversation with him, was that it seemed that the agreements, the conversations, the labor relations with the FG didn't particularly factor in the organized private sector, in that when that pronouncement was made for 35,000 naira salary award for federal workers, state governments are urged to do the same, and private sector workers are also encouraged to do the same. Do you agree with him, that's Mr. Smart Oyerinde, that there needs to be an agreement with the federal government, with Labour, on how they engage the government at various levels to factor in the private sector?
Yes, of course, we agree very much with the private sector of Nigeria. The sector, I mean, this body is comprised of Man, Neka, Nasi, Nasima, and Nasmi. And we have indicated that it is very important for us to take into consideration the organized private sector, the private sector, because we are the most impacted by all of this. And in terms of the wage, most, even though there's talk about minimum wage, most private sector operators, former private sector operators already pay more than the minimum wage. And in terms of giving an award, many of our members, if not most of our, giving what is now generally called palliatives, following the withdrawal of subsidy, floating of the Naira rates, and the general unease in the market. But it is very important for the sector to be at the table, because we have a stake even in ensuring that the refineries work. We have a stake in ensuring that there's mass transit. We have a stake in the stable price of diesel and a reduced price of diesel. Virtually all that was agreed with Labour has implication for the private sector. So we should be part of that process, we agreed. And when my colleague Wale spoke yesterday, he spoke for the organized private sector of Nigeria as our member. So I think that is what government needs to do. And we should, I mean, we expect, and we've had indications that we are going to be part of this process when, particularly within this 1 month window, where issues are expected to take shape in terms of arriving at a more permanent solution to the crisis.
Let me ask Honorable Ekwe this question. I mean, you were responding the other time to questions around whether or not the refineries are going to work one way or the other. There are a good number of people who would wonder, of course, in response to the question, I think it was by Mark, where you said you doubted whether or not, or rather you doubt whether or not the refineries will be able to kick in. But a good number of people will wonder how come, given that it's your members that work in the refineries all over the country. And some people will also recall that they have been earning salaries even though those refineries haven't been working. So if the refineries are to work by the time that the president or the federal government has made this pronouncement, what are the must-do? And how can Labour, being the ones who work in these refineries, ensure that that happens for the benefit of Nigerians? Honorable Ekwe, that's for you.
No more. Okay. Well, I attempted that question when your colleague raised it before. Yes, the workers, our colleagues work there. Let me use this analogy. You work in channels. If the boss of channels does not provide the microphones, notwithstanding you know you need a microphone, you cannot work. So even when the workers know that this rehabilitation and this work is going to work, the decision of bringing even the equipment giving instruction to even install them is not in their hands. It lies in the hand of somebody who is managing the system. The workers can only say, we are ready to fix this, but they cannot go to the store and collect the equipment, especially they have been bought, and they are not the ones that will approve the money to buy it. And that's why they've raised concerns and said, comrades, look, these promises, we are not seeing it on ground. And the people in the authorities said, no, we are doing something. And based on that disagreement, we now say, okay, let's jointly, of course, it will be led by those workers there who understand the technicalities. But say, yes, we are supposed to have fixed A, B, C, D here, but it's not even available. Even how we came to even the issue of rehabilitation was the information we have from the inside that the things are not working.
So, Mr. Uchenna, how do we reconcile the reservation?
We do have to thank both of you tremendously for your time here this morning. Comrade Uche Ekwe is the head International Relations, Nigeria Labour Congress. We've also had Shagun Ajaikede, Director General, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you.
All right, so we will be back in just a moment. Stay on with us.
Southwood. Fine furnishings for your home and office. Southwood is a Nigerian company dedicated to improving the quality of workplaces and homes. Our space planning and craftsmanship allows you to create a highly customized and comfortable office environment for hardworking and busy executives. Southwood solutions are perfect for today's flexible work cultures. Teamwork, transparency, collaboration. A well-designed and comfortable work environment is proven to increase productivity and morale. Our elegant home furnishings provide the ultimate in comfort and quality. Southwood, furnishings that shape your world. Visit us today at southwoodnigeria.com. Email us at furniture@southwoodnigeria.com or call 0700 Furniture.
It is in your hand. And I promise you, just don't keep quiet. Don't procrastinate. Don't be frightened about investments in Nigeria. Bring it home. Ask your questions. Make your requests. The trade and investment opportunity is enormous. I have a team, and I am the captain of that team. I assure you, we solve problems. In fundamental ways, nature has been kind to Africa, given abundant land, resources, and creative and industrious people. Yet, man has too often been unkind to a fellow man, and this sad tendency has brought sustained hardship to Africa's doorstep. To keep faith with the tenets of this world to this body, and the theme of this year's assembly. The poverty of nations must end. The pillage of one nation's resources by overreach of farms and people of stronger nations must end. The will of the people must be respected. This beautiful, generous, and forgiving planet must be protected. As for Africa, we seek to be neither appendage nor patron. We do not wish to replace old shackles with new ones. Instead, we hope to walk the rich African soil and live under the magnificent African sky, free of the wrongs of the past and clear of the associated encumbrances. We desire a beautiful, prosperous, vibrant, democratic living space for our people.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, as you've seen there, Ambassador Yusuf Tugar, OON, is the Minister of Foreign Affairs. He joins us here in the studios. Good morning, and thank you for coming on, sir.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
So how are you settling into the office?
Well, a lot of work, very hectic, and I've come as, is it the Chinese say, interesting times, so, you know, but...
Why do you think it's interesting? What makes it so?
A lot of things happening on the global stage, also in Nigeria, okay. So, you know, but we shall overcome.
Yeah, so in terms of what's happening on the global stage and here, I know that, I mean, reading several pieces, they thought that, you know, in the past, Nigeria had been bogged down with local issues, so we couldn't extend ourselves robustly as we would have loved to. And so, but now we see the president has made several trips internationally. So in terms of the import of all of those trips, what could you tell us about them?
Well, there have been major global events. There has been, of course, the G20 in India, which India, as president or chairman of the G20, current chairman, invited Nigeria. We attended. We had several important engagements. Then there was UNGA, as you know, which is an annual event, the United Nations General Assembly. We attended that as well. And of course, it fits into prepared plan for the administration, which, but you know, we've been talking about the 4 Ds: democracy, development, demography, diaspora. So in terms of democracy, we're also looking to democratize the global system. We're agitating for that. So Nigeria needs to be on the big tables where decisions are taken about the global economy, about the entire planet. So that is why it's important for us to be participating in G20. Of course, we're calling for a reform of the United Nations itself, because the Security Council, as you know, you have 5 permanent members. This is anachronistic, an old thing that, you know, came about at the end of the Second World War.
What are we proposing?
Time to reform. Time for Nigeria to be in there, in the Security Council. We are the largest country in Africa. 15% of Africans are Nigerians. We are projected to become the 3rd largest country in the world by the year 2050. It's going to be China, India, China, then Nigeria.
Are those the key criteria that they will consider?
Well, no, not just that. We're the largest economy also. We've always been a leader. We championed the liberation of African countries from racist regimes. We stood out there. You know, I'm old enough to remember, you know, the moniker Nigeria and the frontline states. I'm sure you are too.
I know that at that time they talked about, I mean, we always hear people talk about that. Whenever a new government comes in, they ask, so what is our foreign policy thrust? Because they seem to define it in their own way. What can you tell us about that part too?
Any Nigerian that wants to learn about our foreign policy should go into Nigeria's constitution. The objectives, foreign policy objectives are clearly stated in the constitution. So that is the starting point. And then, of course, each administration comes with its own style, with its own ideas of how to implement, how to achieve those foreign policy objectives.
Well, big issues which I know that you have on the front, on immediately in your plate. I mean, Belly had the Bola Ahmed Tinubu administration. Well, Belly was sworn in, and then the issue in Niger came up. You know, democracy is a very big issue across not just Africa now, but around the world. People are, you know, having many more questions around democracy and what it delivers. But before we go to, you know, the issues of coup, I wanted to take you up on this issue of the CSU matter and, you know, what it does for our image, you know, across, you know, outside of the shores of Nigeria, because this matter has now been raised in faraway United States of America as to whether or not our president attended a university there and whether or not he presented the right certificates here. I mean, all of this, do they cast a shadow on some of the international engagements that the president has had?
Oh, not at all. We met with several world leaders. Nobody is wasting time about, you know, certificates and qualifications for somebody who has been the governor of a state, served 2 terms, you know, has been on the national stage as a politician. You know, you remember the same, President Buhari had to go through the same thing, where people were actually questioning whether he went to secondary school or not. Someone who had classmates who was captain of his, whatever, he was head boy and all of that. So there's a tendency to always, you know, try to distract, to detain people on such, you know, frivolous issues, as opposed to facing the major issue of development. We don't have time to waste on that. And, you know, the foreign leaders that we've been engaging and the international organizations clearly are disinterested in wasting time on such things. So we pay no mind to that. Nigerians should focus on development, and every Nigerian, because of the critical state we're in at the moment, you know, our population growing at 3% per annum, you know, the economic challenges we're facing. We shouldn't be wasting time about whether, you know, some certificate, whether there's a T missing somewhere or some I hasn't been dotted. That should not be our primary focus at the moment.
You know why I asked that? Because we do know that, I mean, we know that the cloud over this elections, the last elections, are yet to settle. And as a result of that, some people are saying that it could have an effect on the engagement that the president could have with international leaders. Give you an example. When the president was going for G20 or so, we understand that he was supposed to be meeting with the US President, Joe Biden, but that engagement did not happen. Or was it on the sidelines of Onga? I'm a little unclear now, but I do know that there was a statement put out by one of the president's aide, the media aide, saying that you know, the president was going to be having an engagement, but that didn't happen. And there were speculations as to why that didn't happen. And they're saying, oh, maybe it's because they want the cloud of all of the electoral matters to settle before, you know, we can now begin to see world leaders confidently engaging with the president of Nigeria. Is that correct?
It's a misunderstanding of how these things work. When you attend these global events, you have side meetings. And those side meetings are usually not more than 15 minutes, like fast-speed dating. So the proposals are made, sometimes at the last minute. So President Tinubu met with a lot of world leaders. At the same time, there were some that were scheduled to meet him that he did not meet. So it is structured in such a way that you have proposals made, and then sometimes at the last minute, you cancel. There's a world leader that was supposed to meet President Tinubu and then tested positive for COVID and had to cancel. For instance, I'm just saying, you know, I'm not saying it's President Biden, but, you know, these are the sort of things that happen. There was some that wanted to meet us. We couldn't because of the timing, the exigencies, you know.
Yeah, but considering the fact that that one
so
was publicized, I don't know if that particular meeting with U.S. President was publicized and it didn't happen. Do you think that it also had been a clarification as to why it didn't happen?
They already met in India. They met at the G20. They had short discussions. Like I said, it's not more than 15 minutes. Like fast-speed dating, you know, boom, 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 in, out.
Did they achieve a lot in that kind of meeting?
Well, you have to also bear in mind that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a new president. So this is where you get to know each other, you know, because you meet each other routinely. So in some of these meetings, they're meeting for the first time. And they feel each other out. And then, yeah, clearly there are discussions. And then they delegate. Because in each of these meetings, every president has his foreign minister sitting next to him. So we follow up. And then if there are specific issues that they want to focus on, chances are the ministers or individuals that cover that sector are also present in the meeting. And then they follow up so that by the next time they meet, you know, you take off from where you left off.
Well, prior to your appointment, you know, the president had to deal with the major issue of coup, I mean, in neighboring Niger. And we saw, you know, how decisive, as president of ECOWAS, how decisive ECOWAS tried to be with regards to what had happened in Niger, imposing sanctions and, you know, also making very, very strong statements, hoping that they will be able to, you know, reinstate President Bazoum. That hasn't happened. You know, the military junta is still very much in power. So what precisely is the stance right now of Nigeria within ECOWAS, you know, to what is still happening in Niger? Has stance moved? And, you know, there's also the question of war, and Nigerian citizens were very vehement on the insistence that, you know, Nigeria cannot afford to go to any war with neighboring Niger.
First of all, I think war in this context is a misnomer. Nobody talked about war. What the ECOWAS leaders said was that they are taking a firm position against what happened here, and they're considering all options, including military option. Yeah. It didn't mean that we're going from 0 to 200 kilometers per hour, you know, just declaring war on Niger. We do not have a problem with Niger Republic. Nigerians and Nigerians are one and the same. We're the same people. We have the same history, the same culture, the same background, same heritage. So our problem is not with the citizens of Niger. Our problem is with the military junta, or should I even say the presidential guard that took a president hostage. And, you know, clearly, you know, each country, we did not design Niger's constitution for them. They chose their own constitution. They designed their constitution. And a group of nations came together and decided to create an organization called ECOWAS and, you know, pledged to abide by their own constitutions and then the rules laid down by that organization. And they agreed that if one of them violates it, the others must take action against that violation. And that's simply what is going on. We just happen to be, President Tinubu happens to be leading ECOWAS at the time that this happened. And, you know, clearly, if we allow, we see the outcome now. You see what is happening in Mali today. You have insurgents, you have terrorists outside of Timbuktu, about to take over Timbuktu if we're not careful. So why is this happening? Because the military are distracted, they're pointing their guns at each other, There have already been coups and counter-coups in these countries that the military has taken over. So attention is turned on themselves, on the military, grabbing for power at the capital instead of fighting terrorists in the Sahel. This is what is happening, and this is why we are very insistent that, you know, military regimes are passé.
Well, so we think that a similar thing can happen in Niger?
Absolutely. There's tension. That is why Nigeria is insistent. Look at what is happening in the northeast. Most of the troops are now focusing on what is happening at the center, in Niamey, not in Difa. So it is in our own national interest to ensure that, you know, democracy prevails in Niger. We've seen it. We've been through this in this country, where, you know, there's a military takeover, everybody applauds and says, oh, good riddance. And then down the line, a few months later, people are crying. So we have experienced it, and we know that it does not work. It is not sustainable. You cannot continue to hope and pray that some benevolent dictator will come and fix your country. And then even if you do have a benevolent dictator, what happens after him? What if he dies? Who's to say that the next person is going to be an equally performative, benevolent dictator? It does not work. What works is you go to polls, you elect your leaders. After 4 years, if they're not performing, you know, you throw them out. And even if the system is not working the way you expect it, as we go along, there are improvements. Only 4 years. But this, for a dictator, you don't know how long he's going to be there. And then, you know, you don't know if the next guy is going to pick up a gun and take over. You know, it doesn't work.
Ambassador, loads of questions for you, but I'm not going to ask them all. My colleagues in Lagos certainly have some for you as well. Buki and Ayo, over to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Malpe. Ambassador Tuga, I'd like to take you up on, you know, two components from the foreign policy disposition of the current administration, which would be development and diaspora. But let's start with development, you know, particularly as it has to do with Nigeria's failure to put up application for membership of BRICS, you know, following the just concluded BRICS 2023 summit. I'm wondering how tenable the Vice President's explanation would be, you know, about Nigeria's failure to apply, giving, you know, BRICS current disposition to rivaling the West, particularly as it has to do with their failure, you know, to make commitments to the imperatives of the development of the global South, i.e. security, food, energy, and all of that. And when you also consider, you know, that the new countries that have been admitted into membership of BRICS, you know, are countries that were far behind in development, you know, but behind Nigeria when you consider 2 decades ago.
Hello? Okay. Well,
yes, go.
Nigeria is a beautiful bride that at the moment is highly sought after. And this gives us an opportunity to engage organizations such as BRICS, largely based on our own terms. And sometimes, you know, timing is key. You have to look at the temporal advantages, you know, of when you take decisions. So perhaps, you know, when we weigh it and decide that we're not going to rush to join BRICS when everybody else is falling over themselves to join, perhaps, you know, that might be in the best interest of Nigeria. You can see that right now there's a rush to join BRICS. It's not to say that we're not discussing with BRICS, we're not engaging with them. And sometimes it's not even so much the joining formally, but the participation. We participated in the BRICS summit, and we also participated in the G20 summit. So it's still early days. People forget that it's a new administration. So we have to weigh these things. We also have to take into cognizance our own internal prevailing circumstances and also the wishes and the concerns of stakeholders internally and interest groups. So, there's so many variables that have to be considered. And we're still engaging BRICS. We're still talking to Brazil, for instance, and India and China and South Africa and Russia, And Brazil, incidentally, is the next president of the G20. So, some of these groups overlap. And the key issue is to be part of it, is to be involved. And then, when we deem it fit, we can formally enter into it. But the formal entry is not even so much the most important thing, but being part of it and the visibility and, being part of the decisions.
Well, I imagine that the key issue would also be beyond informal participation, being at the decision-making table as well, being part of those countries making influence in the Committee of Nations. But let's go to Diaspora. I wonder if the ministry under your administration will prioritize the state of Nigerian students studying in North Cyprus. The Zamfara state government has, in fact, defended its decision not to follow up its commitment to their scholarships, which has left them stranded in that country right now. According to the latest report that we heard about them in August, they're passing the night wherever it is that they find themselves because the state government has not funded the scholarship program, which also covers their accommodation. And of course, the state of the Nigerian students in that country in general, who are suffering all forms of indignities, because, they have discovered that things are not as rosy as they thought that it would be, but, are now suffering all sorts in that country. So what will your administration, the ministry under your leadership, do to return these students back home?
Well, you see, this is why it's very important for the federating units, the state governments, work hand in hand with the federal government and in particular the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. There's a tendency to engage in all sorts of activities and programs abroad with other countries, such that, I've been an ambassador. I know that there are lots of times when sub-state actors and government officials fly into a country, the embassy doesn't know that they've come in. They're coming for official meetings. They engage officials of that country, or they make arrangements for scholarships for students to be sent into institutions of higher learning abroad without recourse to the embassy or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So sometimes we don't even have the information. We're playing catch up. And really the onus is on those sub-state actors to keep the Ministry of Foreign Affairs involved. And this is, I believe, one such case. Like you said, it is a scholarship that was negotiated by a state government, not the federal government, not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not the Nigerian embassy, but the state government. And you have to try and keep track of it. Perhaps if they had involved us, then we would know about it and we would be able to react immediately, or actually even step in to try and find some sort of relief, so that the time that the students are given before they are put in this sort of situation is, they give them some extension. So, I'd like to use this opportunity really to urge, state governments to please keep us informed so that we continue to work hand in hand. Nobody is saying that they cannot be foreign policy actors. Of course, they can, but we have to work in unison, because once you step out the realm of foreign affairs, of diplomacy, of implementing foreign policy, then you have to work in unison, because Nigeria is a united, one entity. You know, the states, when I say states, I'm talking about countries. They're the prime referent on the global stage in international relations. So they're considered to be individuals. And it is an anarchic system, as as the international relations scholars will continue to remind us.
Just a quick one on that, if you can do this in 30 seconds or so. What then would be the fate of these Nigerians right now? Is there an embassy there they can go to? Who can they talk to ensure that, you know, things don't get worse while we resolve the issue of partnership?
Rest assured, of course. I'll answer it in 5, not even 30 seconds. We're working on it. Rest assured, we never leave anybody behind. You see what Nigeria did in Ukraine, sending in planes to fly out students. And I think it's incumbent on the Nigerian media to actually highlight such success stories, so that, you know, we fill ourselves with national pride and patriotism, because it's very important. Let's sing the songs when we do well, when we perform commendably. Let us not continue to dwell on the negative. Very important that we do that, because, you know, it is what really determines the success or failure of nations. Well, you see other nations, they do not focus all the time on the negative and just pick the negative stuff. I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's good for democracy, and that's why I continue to say that democracy is good. And so far, with all the systems of government that mankind has devised, it is as flawed as it may be, the best one so far. Even communist countries will tell you that they are democratic. So communism is an ideal. That, you know,
well, perhaps in the same space, Your Excellency, while we're still talking about Nigerians in diaspora, we got this information, I don't know if you're aware of it, of some embassies in different parts of the world having a shortage of Nigerian passports. We got this information that the Nigerian embassy in South Africa, for instance, it was giving only 500 booklets a month for the thousands of Nigerians in South Africa, in Lesotho, Eswatini, and so on. And this kind of reports is replete in various parts of the world as well. What can you tell us about that, and if there is anything being done?
Well, in terms of anything being done, I can assure you that we're doing our very best. And for the rest of it, I think you've got the wrong minister. You need the Minister for Internal Affairs, and you need the CG of Immigration to come and answer this. It's a matter of demand and supply. The more passports you have, the better. It is not the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that is responsible for producing passports and even the issuance. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is the host. We host other government ministries, departments, and agencies in our embassy. So within the embassy, you have immigration, you have defense section, where you have the military, you know, the 3 arms of the military. And of course, you do have foreign service officers. So it is do with demand and supply of passports. So
well, the reason for that question
is something that is important to address. And then it is under a PPP arrangement, which has long existed.
Well, the reason for the question is because you talked about the embassies and the image of Nigeria and all of that. So when these things happen, at the end of the day, it's about the image of Nigeria, as Malcolm mentioned the other time. And then part of the foreign policy, Nigeria's foreign policy, as you mentioned in the objectives of the foreign policy in the Constitution, Section 19, talks about the promotion of African integration and support for African unity. Over the weekend, we had this conversation, well, on Monday, actually, we had this conversation around Empowering Tomorrow, a new vision for Nigeria 63. And someone was raising the issue of partnership or a lack of it among African countries. Someone was saying in our audience that it was cheaper to export something to Germany than it is to export it to Ghana. And so one wonders how what would be your own take on that one? How can we make things better such that economic activities within African countries can be towards what is in the foreign policy objective of Nigeria, African integration and support for African unity?
That's why we're doing a lot. Nigeria is doing a lot when it comes to African integration and unity. You forget that we have a West Africa gas pipeline that we built in 2003 that takes Nigerian gas to Republic of Benin, Togo, and Ghana. We're at the moment also working on the Trans-Saharan gas pipeline, which is supposed to deliver gas. Already we have the trunk, the main trunk. It's the project has gone very far. The Ajakuta, Abuja, Kaduna, Kano gas pipeline. We have the Kano Maradi rail project, taking Nigerian rail to all the way to Maradi in Niger Republic, and the idea is to extend that further. We have a fiber optic line concurrently that is supposed to run all the way to Algeria. So it's building infrastructure. When you build infrastructure across Africa, then you're providing immediate employment during the course of the construction, and then subsequently economic activity, because this is, you know, you're talking about Lakaji, Lagos, Kaduna, Kano, Jibia trade and transport corridor. Tomorrow, I am going to Cotonou for a meeting of the Abidjan-Lagos corridor. You know, that's another trade corridor. So this is what we're doing, and this is the essence of the African Continental Free Trade Area. And indeed, also ECOWAS. ECOWAS is an economic community of West African states. So you have these regional economic communities that are supposed to integrate Africa. So Nigeria is indeed doing a lot when it comes to that. And then some. Customs union, we're talking about monetary union. This is what, and they've actually, African Continental Free Trade Area has adopted what we have had since 1994, Nigeria Interbanking Settlement System. They're calling it PAPAS, Pan-African Payment System. It's a superb infrastructure that has unleashed all this potential in terms of fintech. That's why you see a lot of Nigerian fintechs. You're beginning to see unicorns and all of that. It didn't happen by accident. It is, you know, because of these actions that the Nigerian government and Nigerian private sector and Nigerians as a whole have taken.
What are you doing about ensuring that our embassies, I mean, you're the right minister to talk about that one, they are a lot more responsive to Nigerians? Because I know you must have heard over time how they always say they get to the missions abroad and not responsive to Nigerians, and they don't like that. What are you doing about that?
That is why we have that fourth D, Diaspora. We know that we need to improve the services that we render, and we know that we need to train the staff of the embassy even better. It's important to also understand that you have diplomats that are sent from Nigeria, these embassies, but then you also have locally recruited staff that are there on a contract basis. And there's a tendency for Nigerian embassies to employ locally recruited staff that are of Nigerian origin as a way of supporting Nigerians. But a lot of the times, some of the challenges, because those that actually even interface with other Nigerians abroad tend to be the local staff, first and foremost. Now, so it's actually Nigerians, you know, having issues with other Nigerians. And there's no law that says you have to employ Nigerians in the Nigerian embassy, in Nigerian High Commission in London, or in Berlin.
You want to change that?
South Africa. No, I'm just explaining to you, because the perception sometimes is that Nigerian diplomats or foreign service officers are sent out there and they're the ones that are mean and cruel to Nigerians. No, It is a matter of training. It is a matter of also being able to let go staff that are found wanting. Because they're engaged, the local staff are engaged on a contract basis for 2 years, usually. Sometimes it's even 1 year. And they're supposed to, reapply if they want, and it's open for others to also apply for the same job. So, but what tends to happen is the moment somebody turns out to be a deviant, does something wrong, and you say you want to let him go, you're not going to renew his contract, that is it. You're doing so because he is Hausa or he's Igbo or he's Yoruba. I've faced that myself.
So, but now...
And then you start having people from Nigeria calling the ambassador saying, please, he's my brother, he's my...
Are you going to be firm now and fire anyone who doesn't obey the books?
Absolutely, we have to do that. But before we even start talking about firing, is to make them understand the essence of the service that they're supposed to be providing for Nigerians. That is the... And Nigerians too are not easy, because a lot of the people we're having to deal with in embassies are Nigerians that have traveled outside, particularly in Europe, that cannot read or write. They're not literate, and they've come to apply for a passport. So it's not easy. They tend to be impatient sometimes. Sometimes, of course, the workers would be impatient with them because you have to fill the forms for them. You have to, take them through the whole process of applying for a passport. So there's so many intricacies, that we don't have time to get into.
Yeah, because, there are several other issues that I wanted to take you up on, but I guess we'll wait for another time, because, how you want us to be perceived on international or global stages equally as important. But we have to thank you for coming on. We've been speaking with His Excellency Yusuf Tuga, ON Minister of Foreign Affairs. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's see. Can we take a message or two, guys? Do we have that much time? I think we can with Festus's, his tweet says, he's talking about the NLC now. NLC and TUC should be applauded for suspending their nationwide strike for 30 days. While the removal of fuel subsidy is a hammer blow for workers and the majority of Nigerians, a nationwide strike will not only make Nigeria poorer for workers, and the majority of Nigerians will also bear the brunt of the strike. Government must honor the agreement with labor and ease the painful effects of the subsidy removal, he says.
Ola Alpha Cross says the government should put the modalities in place to meet all genuine demands of organized labor unions. The idea of a strike and its accompanying economic woe should be better imagined than experienced in this already battered economy. And I think there's one more from, can't see who now, there's an email talking about the CSU certificate saga. It's from Eka Dixon, I can see that now. The unnecessary controversy surrounding the certificate of President Bola Tinubu that has caused national embarrassment to Nigeria and Nigerians is quite unfortunate. Academic qualifications are not sacred things. For instance, I graduated from Benue State University, and without my knowledge, anyone can visit the school and ask for my credentials. The unnecessary dragging leading to a forceful release via a court ruling is already an indictment to show that something is wrong. We should remain calm to allow Atiku Abubakar and his lawyers who requested for the certificates to do their diligence with the release documents. We need to focus on the bleeding economy to salvage our country.
Eka Dixon, I hope they hear you. Well, that is the show today. We have to thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Thank you. I'm Malcolm Yusuf.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
And I'm Ayo Makine. Have a wonderful day.